life is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to God. Well, in a world where challenges are plentiful, it's easy for us to feel discouraged. Yet with enough guidance and support, most people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. Well, beyond your fears is everything you ever dreamed of. For the Dr. STEM Show will give the voiceless a voice and the hopeless hope. And now, here she is, Dr. STEM.
Hello and welcome again, everyone, to the Dr. STEM Show and podcast. I know we haven't done this in a little bit because I'll be looking for special guests that can come in and inspire, motivate, and empower you. And as always, I never disappoint because the guest that is here with us today will definitely inspire you, motivate you, especially encourage all of you that are sitting and going, oh, what should I do with this downtime? And you know what? There's nothing that I can do because of COVID-19. He's going to prove you wrong. And, mark my words on it, because we are going to be, speaking to Mr. John Illuvera, who has graced us with his presence today. Mr. John, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Dr. STEM, and thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Before I jump into this, let me just tell all of my audience about a new program that I am launching this October. It's called Self-Care Virtual Workshops. Here's what's happening. Because of COVID-19, a lot of people are struggling with mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, stress. So what happens too is they are waiting lists for you to see a therapist. So as a result, people are left with nothing and just waiting for months and months and weeks and weeks. As a professional, many of you know that I've been doing mental health counseling for over 20 years. I cannot even think or fathom people waiting for services when they need help right now and they're getting anxious right now. So as a result, I am launching virtual workshops as of this October. If you want to learn more about it, we are starting with anxiety because that's the number one, mental health problem that a lot of people are struggling with. Please go to my website, www.drstemmie.com, DRSTEMMIE.com, and you will get more information on our very first anxiety workshop that we will be doing virtual. Without further ado, I want to make sure that we get into talking to our special guest today, Mr. John Lluvera, who, guess what, is a first-time author. I'm very excited in this era where many people are beginning to lose faith in our law enforcement. He has stepped up to tell you and talk to all of us about the importance of law enforcement and how passionate many of them are. 99% of the law enforcement officers are passionate about protecting and serving. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. John to tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you. And just briefly, I'm a retired New York City police officer.
Yes.
I was there for almost 18 years. I was injured and went back to school, became a licensed practical nurse, retired after 16 years of doing that. I'm presently married. I have two biological children, and I have two wonderful stepsons. And I just enjoy the service of helping people, especially those who are in need. There's no doubt that a little bit of good faith goes a long way.
You're right. I want to give a shout out to your daughter who was so gracious enough to connect us, because I was talking to her the other day and, she says, oh, my dad just wrote a book. And all of a sudden I go, oh, wow, I want to hear about that book. I see where the resemblance is. She's just as humble, nice, and also a servant who is in our school system. So I want to give a shout out to her as well.
Thank you for the kind words. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm excited because, at the beginning I mentioned that you are one of those people that will be talking to us about, don't waste a minute of this special time that you have. How have you used your time of this COVID-19?
Well, like everyone else, I feel that I've been locked up in my home for many months. But uh, for me, I've been reading, I've been writing, I've been gardening, I've been cooking because I'm a better than average cook, and just doing some more things around the house, and just trying to stay focused and trying to stay positive about this awful, awful, horrendous pandemic, COVID-19, that's affecting all of us.
Yeah. And before I go back into, because I want to get to deeper into your childhood memories and who you were, how young are you, Mr. John?
I am proud to say I'm 72 years young, and it's been a long journey, but I wouldn't have had it any other way.
72, and you're writing your first book?
My first book, yes.
Hey.
Thank you, thank you,
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you.
Oh, I have 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds that are going, oh, I'm too old to even start. And here you are, defying the odds.
You're never too old to dream. You're never too old to try and make those dreams come true.
You're very right. You're very right. Wow. Congratulations. Congratulations. You know what? For all of you that are watching this, look behind him. There's a banner in there of his book, that very first book that he wrote. And what's that title again, sir?
I wore it with pride.
I wore it with pride. As you can see, he said he is a retired New York Police Department officer. Say he's got the NYPD cars on his book.
That is
Please
correct.
be sure to pull up that book. It's on Amazon.com. I wore it with pride. If you are one that likes to Google, you can Google the book. It says I wore it with pride, and that's the badge. I'm assuming that you wore the badge with pride. Is that it?
That was something that it was a lifelong dream, and I was able to fulfill that dream, and it's just been a wonderful, wonderful journey.
So, talking about it being a lifelong dream, right? Let's get back to the time that you were 2 years old. Do you have any memories of maybe it can, that will have made you end up being a law enforcement officer or be the person that you are? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, at the age of 2, I can remember as vivid as it may have occurred yesterday. I can remember my father coming home intoxicated and verbally and physically abusing my mother. And I knew right then and there that this was something that, as I got older, I was going to try and correct. And I wanted to make sure that this type of behavior did not continue. So in my mind, at the age of 2, I'm sitting there in bed with my mother with 2 little plastic guns, Hopalong Cassidy guns, by the way, and just wanting to do something more with my life, and knowing that abuse, whether it be physical or whether it be verbal, is never something that should be tolerated or taken for granted.
You're right. You're right. So, was that at that age that you wanted to protect people like your mother, or to protect your mother, that you started thinking about, a job like that? How did you get into, the police department?
Well, actually, as time went on and I got a little older, um, I had a neighbor, a next door neighbor to where my grandmother had a home, where I was being raised at the time, who was a city employee. And that neighbor, Mr. Jacobs, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he always used to tell me, get a government job, get a city job. That is your ticket into middle class. Get a government job. And when I came out of high school, I took 3 civil service exams: fire department, New York City Police Department, and the corrections department. And it just so happens that I scored very high for the NYPD, and I was sworn in less than a year after I graduated from high school.
So that was you graduated at what age? 18? I mean, or 17?
I was sworn in at the age of 19, going on 20, but I couldn't become a police officer until actually I turned 21, because you couldn't carry a firearm until you're 21 years of age. So I worked at what they call a police trainee program, which was a program developed for minorities throughout the city of New York to bring on Black and brown, male and female recruits into the department, because at that time, in the late 60s, at the tail end of the riots, they were trying to make the police department look more like the community we lived in. And that was my avenue. That was the way I was able to get into the police department, through that program.
Oh, I see. And so that's the 60s, and here we are in this day and age. If you were to think back and compare some of the challenges that you went through and what the law enforcement officers go through today, would you elaborate a little bit on some of the challenges that you see and know?
No, absolutely. You know, I'm asked this question quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the answer is very simple. But people ask me, what's the difference between policing back in the 60s,
Yeah.
at the tail end of riots, and what's going on now with the demonstrations and the looting and so on and so forth? The main difference is in today's age, everybody and their grandmother has a camera, and everything is videotaped. So you have proof of activity and conduct that it's illegal on both sides. Police officers back in the 60s, a very small percentage, because like you said earlier in the introduction, most police officers want to help and protect the communities they're serving. That's a given, but there's always a small percentage that have other motives and want to do other things. And I've seen it so many times where police officers were physically and verbally abusing your average Black and brown citizens without cause, and just just on the edge there of breaking the law, and it was awful. So it hasn't really changed that much.
Yeah, you're right. Except now it's out in the light. Like they say, what happens in the dark will always come out in the light.
Everyone can see it now. Now we have our white brothers and sisters that may have in the past been in denial about some of these activities, are actually seeing clear as day how Black and brown people have been treated by law enforcement throughout the years. It's improving, and we all need to have the presence of the presence of an honorable police department that's there to do the right thing for their community.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Well said. But you know what? I'm more excited about talking about this book that is behind you, because, for me to have someone serve for 18 years, there are certain talents I think that one has to tap into, especially this time, in order to even have the courage to write a book like that, and determination. What are some of the talents and courage, that you tapped into in order for you to come up with your first book?
Well, the first thing I had to do, I had to gather all my thoughts in the sequence that they occurred. And that took several months to do that. From the day that I started writing until the day that my book was published, it was a 20-month journey. The reason I wanted to do this is because I want to try and inspire and encourage Black and brown youth and and young adults to continue to dream. My entire story is about hope and perseverance. And there are people that are still in this awful cycle of poverty, not having any hope to doing anything with their lives, get an education. I had a little hope along the way. And now that I'm 72 years old, if I can extend my hand out and pull somebody else up that's stuck, that feels hopeless, that's depressed, then that's what I'm going to do.
You just mentioned that you had help along the way. Take us back into probably your childhood on some of the people that gave you hope that now in these adult years you have had to think back and think of those cheerleaders that always believed and knew that you could do it before you knew it.
Well, I had two angels, my mother and my grandmother. It was a big thing back in the 60s. Your living room furniture was always covered with plastic, your couches and your chairs, to protect it, because they couldn't afford to buy furniture every couple of years. You know, when they bought furniture in those days, they probably last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
The point is that those two angels are sitting up there on that couch, on a couch that has plastic covered over it, looking down at me, and they're still my angels. Those are the ones, those two women were the strongest women that I've ever known in my life, because they were able to take me out of terrible situations and give me light and show me how to persevere and how to be successful in life. And they, those two were the driving force, and they're still up there looking down at me. And I'm quite sure that they like what they see, and they have a smile on their face, because I'm sure that they're proud of me.
Hey, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them smiling at you and continuing to be proud of you. So that's really, really good. You know, when you were talking about the plastics, right? Even, in the 70s, when, I was growing up, the plastics were common, in Zimbabwe, because I grew up in Zimbabwe. So of course they didn't have money to be buying couches and furniture. So they covered it in plastic. But I just, thought of an analogy as you were talking, and I thought, on those couches, where they were the place where my grandmother also and my mother prayed for us and asked God to guide us and be with us on those plastics when we were sitting on those plastic couches and kneeling by the plastic couch, and they are praying for this moment that we're having now. So it's almost like now it's time to remove the plastic and be able to share the wisdom that we learned on those plastic couches, right? And that's what you see in that book.
Absolutely. That's a good analogy, and you're absolutely correct. The stories, the advice that was shared on those plastic couches, they were all worthwhile.
Yes, yes. So the book itself, you talk about hope and perseverance. Can you get a little bit into, some of the stories that the readers will find in that book about hope and perseverance?
Well, one of the biggest things that I clearly remember when I was a police officer, as I indicated and stated earlier, that it didn't sit well with me when I saw police officers, my peers, verbally and sometimes physically abusing people just because they were junkies or prostitutes or gamblers. Um, I didn't feel comfortable with that. They just decided they were going to be someone and treat them lesser than any other human being on this planet. And that didn't sit well with me. So what I did was, a couple of times, I spoke up. And that didn't serve me well, because after I spoke up, I was cast aside, and I wasn't made to feel like I was part of the team. When those things occurred, I knew right then and there that probably my police life and my career, my police career, would cut short because I just didn't want to be part of the problem. I always wanted to be part of the solution.
Mm.
And so I continue to do whatever I need to do to make sure that at the end of the day, my self-respect was intact. And what I raised my hand and swore to was something that carried on.
Oh, wow. And you know, thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people, I think, you know, you probably have seen it too, have questioned those that are minorities that are in law enforcement on why they don't speak up and why they don't have a voice. And what you just said is, I mean, you know, for many of them, this is bread and butter. So you're part of a team as well. So you're seen as a trader, and certain times some people have even come up and said, you know, you might even, you know, put your family and yourself in harm's way by saying something or going against, you know, what is wrong.
Absolutely. And my message to today's youth and young adults is you have the power to change things by your vote. Get out, demonstrate, show your anger, but uh, keep it within the law, and get out there and vote. Vote in mass numbers and make the change that way, as opposed to um, looting and rioting and committing crimes. Yes, there are police officers that out there that are not your friends. They're not there to do the right thing. Well, uh, those officers will be dealt with as time goes on, and they'll be exposed and they'll be fired. But you do the right thing, and the best thing that you can do is to cast your vote.
Yeah, and it sounds like, you know, for those that are not on the people's side, the only other way is for the people to speak up, to make the correct reports in the right way, where you make a phone call and file a report, or do a written report and write it so that it's kept, you know, on file, and the correct procedures are taken into, and that means people will have to ask for the name and also look at the name badge so that you can make it proper procedures. That way, again, we put it back into the law enforcement to do the right thing and serve and protect the people, right?
Absolutely, that goes without mention. And always believe that you can make a change because you can. Believe in yourself. Believe in the system to some extent. And if the system is not working for you, well, you know what? Be part of the solution. Get out there and try and change it.
Yes. So 18 years, you're done. You get injured on the job. So is that how you left?
That's how I left. I was injured at a demonstration
Oh,
uh, at the Russian embassy, and I was hospitalized for almost 2 months. And I was out sick for almost a year. When I was ready to return back to active duty after being out on sick leave for so long, because that's how long it took for my injuries to heal, or
wow.
to start healing. I was told that I could probably do something else in life, but I couldn't continue to be a police officer. So that started a whole new chain of what I was going to do and how I was going to funnel my my life in a different direction. And that's when I decided. But keep in mind that during that period, I was still going to school because I knew that at the end of my police career, uh, a college education would be extremely hopeful.
So, wow. Where did you try to go to work after the 1 year of recovery, and then that's when they told you to, you know, probably find something else to do? How did you take that, and how long did it take you, you know, to let that go and pursue full force the nursing career?
Oh, that was devastating. Keep in mind that all my personal friends, the majority of them, they were all police officers. Um, it took me a couple of years to actually um, gather myself and figure out what was going to be my next move. It just wasn't something that happened overnight. I was in denial. I was angry. I was disappointed. I had all of those emotions going on. But life goes on, and I just knew that there, that the good Lord would have something else planned for me, and I just moved along, got that, finished my education, and went on to the next challenge.
I'm also going to put you on the spot because it's not many times that I get a law enforcement officer, retired or current, that comes on to the show.
Sure.
I mean, what you went through is a precipitator for depression. Did you suffer from depression? Did you know it? Did you get any treatment during that time?
Absolutely, I suffered from depression. Uh, did I get any treatment? No, I didn't get any treatment because there was still a stigma attached to that, and you uh, uh, you wasn't supposed to tell anyone else. It wasn't as emphasized and encouraged as it is today. Back then, you had to kind of just deal with it internally and hope and pray that eventually it would subside and it would go away. And yeah, I dealt with depression, and to me, it was an up and down state because some days I would feel better than others, but it was up and down until I was able to deal with it on a steady basis. It equalized, and I was able to move on to my next career.
It never, I think, one of the things that really, really breaks my heart is for such hardworking individuals in law enforcement that there is such a what word can I put? Where people are not open to sitting down and talking to a counselor or going through counseling, because of all careers, I think law enforcement sees, hears, and does things that really, really affects the mind, that I think it would shorten the amount of time that they stay away from work, or that they really struggle and suffer with nightmares, with the thoughts and the feelings for years, that it could shorten that time if it was something that they would be open to doing, though. Even today, these programs, I'm sure you've heard of them, where they call them EAP, Employee Assistance Program. Law enforcement are the few and the last people, if we were to look at our schedules to see if law enforcement officers call in and say that, it's still a big stigma, which is sad.
No, it's very sad. But on top of that,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that there's a very high percentage of divorce rate within the police department, and all that can be traced right back to your police work because of the. Keep in mind, the majority of the times while you're doing police work, the people that you meet out in the street, the majority of them are not very nice people. Mm-hmm. And all that anxiety, all those emotions get built up. And what happens? You take all that and you take it home with you.
Home, yep.
And they always used to say, oh, well, you should try and separate your business side of your life with your personal side. And that doesn't happen. It's a nice phrase, but it doesn't happen that way. It's all interconnected, and it should all be dealt holistically at the same time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even medical ailments, they are all connected to emotional wellness as well. And I know in your book you talk about being diagnosed with prostate cancer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when I was initially diagnosed, I was in denial, and actually I went to 3 different doctors, and got pretty much the same diagnosis because I was in denial.
Mm.
And when I finally came to terms with it, I dealt with the treatments and so on and so forth. But what happened was I was 9 years cancer free. And all of a sudden, in 2017, its ugly head appeared again. And I just couldn't believe it. And that was the inspiration for writing my book. I
Wow.
decided right then and there that this is what I was going to do. And I was going to write my story. And the day that I started my radiation treatment, which was the second week in January of 2018, that day I started radiation was that same day that I started writing my book. And I didn't stop until I finished and published it 20 months later.
Wow.
So some good came of it, but also at the age of 72 and being a cancer survivor, I knew that the man upstairs had other plans for me. Because I always used to ask him, well, you've allowed me to stay here. You've allowed me to have relatively good health. What do you want me to do? And his answer to me was, I want you to help somebody else like you've been doing all of your life. Because if you think about it, going from being a policeman to being a nurse to going to be being a mentor and a basketball coach is all about helping people. And that's something that's built in to my DNA. That's part of me. And that's what I will continue to do until I get called upstairs and have a chance to see my mother and grandmother again sitting on that couch. I'll get to sit on that couch with that plastic covering with them.
I can see what you will say. Listen, I wore it, my way, but then I lived my life my way and I did it my way. And they're going to be so proud of you.
Yeah, they will. They will be very proud of me. And they'll welcome me with open arms like they've always had. So, but the title of my book, I Wore It With Pride. It was all about the journey to putting on and donning that uniform and knowing that the power was there for me to help other people around me that necessarily couldn't help themselves. And I continue to do that. I've done it all my life and I will continue to do that.
Wow. Thank you so much for your service and, continue to serve, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I know one of the things that you also are passionate about that you write about in the book is serving the youth, especially youth that come from one-parent families. Why is that?
Yeah, when I finally retired from nursing, I decided that I was going to coach, and I coached a co-ed basketball team, AAU basketball team, and I could tell immediately when some of those youths who came from single family homes, who they were by their behavior, by their comments, by the way, maybe by the way they dress. And I knew because that was who I was when I was their age. And so I had a lot of experience, not being a professional, but I had a lot of experience through the years of being able to identify this type of behavior. And it was such a pleasure helping these troubled youths. It could have been just putting my arm around them and reassuring them that they played a vital role on our team. It could be me yelling at them, but I wanted them to do better. So everyone was different, and I had to identify that and provide whatever it was that particular young man or young lady needed at the time to feel good about themselves and have a positive self-esteem, and knowing that there was somebody there that cared about them. And that's how I carried myself, and that just, once again, extending and helping.
So I know there will be one young man that will be watching and asking, is it, something that I can also continue to dream of to become a enforcement officer? I mean, what are some of the good parts of being a law enforcement officer, would you tell that young man or young woman? Because now we have the young ladies also being officers.
Well, it's an honorable job. Um, it truly is, and it pays pretty good now. I mean, the pay could be much better, of course, but it is an honorable job. And once again, um, I just feel that police officers should live and work within the community that they serve, because you can identify the things that needs improvement or things that you can help change by your mere presence of being part of that community. You shouldn't be allowed to work in one county and live in another county. You should be there, and you should know what the issues are and be a part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Okay. I'm now at that part where I do what I call marathon questions. So you will be giving me some marathon answers real quick. What is your talent?
Being helpful.
Being helpful. Oh, don't forget, now you can put in author as the #1 talent now.
That is true. That is true, and I'm very proud of that.
Yes, yes. And who did you learn the skills from of helping others?
My mother and my grandmother.
Your mother and your grandmother. Why would you continue on this path in life?
Because it's part of my DNA. That's who I am. It's built in, and it will continue to be that way.
What's the one thing that you have done consistently?
Extend my hand to someone in need and let them know that I'm there for them.
How do you feel about doing that?
It makes me feel wonderful to know that I'm helping someone.
Do you believe in God?
Absolutely. God is my savior, and he's the one that I talk to every day and get direction and advice. Without him, I'm not quite sure where I'd be.
And what is your personal mission statement?
My personal mission statement, and I've thought about this a lot, is to uplift, inspire, and encourage anyone that feels alone and helpless, and to continue to dream, and those dreams will allow you to persevere.
Wow, thank you so much. I hope all of you that are out there, regardless of what age you are, that this interview will inspire you to dream big. I'm always talking about dream big, and God never disappoints. I don't care how long it takes, but once you are dreaming and you've prayed about it, you were actually created for a purpose and a mission. And your job is to figure out what that purpose is and what that mission is. Let me tell you a little bit about Mr. John. The minute that I reached out and told him that I was going to be doing this interview, he did not stop preparing and so excited. And you could tell that, okay, this is his passion to share, his work, his calling, and to inspire and motivate others to say, listen, never, ever, ever give up. And with that said, do not forget to go on Amazon.com so that you can get his book, I Wore It with a Pride. Any last words, Mr. John?
Dr. Stem, thank you so very much for allowing me to come and share my story. And like you said, and I'm just going to jump on this as well, don't ever, ever, ever give up.
Amen. As we said, I will have all his links so that you can also go to his website. And if you do purchase the book, do not forget to make a comment so that other people can be inspired and purchase. And as I always say, spread it out, share the links so that other people can watch this and also buy this book and continue to support and inspire the programs that Mr. John is now pursuing of helping youth and continuing to help others. As I always say, this is Dr. Stem. Be encouraged. Until next time, please stay safe.
You just heard from Dr. Stem. She is opening up an opportunity for you to have unlimited access to Empowerment Hub, filled with life success resources to help you deal with stress, communication, confidence issues, career decisions, business success tips, and more. So now, the only question left is, are you ready? Are you ready to tackle that one thing preventing you from achieving your highest potential? To achieve that one goal you've been chasing, to turn your dreams into reality, to finally keep that promise you've been making to yourself. Let Dr. Stem's programs be your guide to feeling more confident and fearless. Are you ready to become a Premier member for only $27 a month? That's less than a coaching session. Get unlimited access to Dr. Stem's empowerment courses, ebooks, free webinars, and more. Become a member today for only $27 a month.